Good evening in Paris and in Lille and everywhere watching this match, and as well to the judge. We are in the eighth of finals round of 16 of this competition 2025 8th edition. My name is Aurélien Lorange, and Miss Urbanova will be hosting the match as well from the Corax Foundation. I give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you very much, and indeed, good evening to the two participating debate teams for this final match, the final match of this edition that will be happening. The topic you have received 7 days in advance is whether or not international courts should have extraterritorial jurisdictions over violations of migrant rights in transit zones. So, as always, we'll have the randomizer to allocate your positions for the debate itself. But in the beginning, I'll pass you the floor for your reintroductions, starting with Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne University, Ms. Dittmar.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Emily Dittmar. I'm a third-year law student at Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne in Law and Economics.
You're welcome. From Catholic University of Lille, Ms. Lepere.
Hi, I'm Jeanne Lepers, and I'm in the first year in the European and International Law in the Catholic.
Welcome, Mr. Velev of Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne University.
Hello, my name is Martin, and I'm in a third year Bachelor's of Law student at the University of Paris 1.
Thank you. Welcome. From Catholic University of Lille, Ms. Nguyen.
Hello, I'm a first year student at the Catholic University of Lille, and I'm studying international and European law.
You're welcome. Ms. Mahboubani of Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne University.
Hello, everybody. My name is Magna Mahboubani. I'm in a third year diploma of law at Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne in law and history of law.
Welcome. And for Catholic University of Lille, Ms. Sampson.
Hello, my name is Manon Sampson, and I am a first year international and European law student at the Catholic University of Lille.
Thank you. Welcome. So in a short while, you should see the screen of my colleague for the randomizer for the allocation of positions. Just a short reminder to you as well as the audience, you will get also visual cues. Yellow indicates 30 seconds left, and red will indicate your time being up. All that from my side for now. Best of luck.
Yes, so I will share my screen, so you'll be able to see not the 5 minutes, but the wheel. So, as you can see, there are the double flags and logos of your respective institutions. So 2 chances, 1 chance to be in favor, 1 chance to be against the motion. The team will be in favor, will be starting the match with the first introduction. So for this match, that will be the Catholic University of Lille will be in favor of the motion starting with the first introduction, while Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne University will be against the motion. Concretely, it means Catholic University of Lille will defend the position that international courts should have extraterritorial jurisdiction over violations of migrant rights in transit zones, while Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne University will defend the position that international courts should not have extraterritorial jurisdiction over violations of migrant rights in transit zones. Now you'll have 5 minutes to review your notes, and then we'll hear the introduction by the Catholic University of Lille. Here we are done with the 5 minutes of preparation.
Thank you. So as your time for final preparation is now over, we'll be starting by hearing the opening statements, starting with the position in favor, Catholic University of Lille. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the jury, fellow debaters. Human rights do not stop at borders, and dignity has no waiting zones, said Michelle Bachelet, former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. These words remind us a simple truth. Rights are not linked to geography. Yet, in practice, transit zones are often treated as legal voids. This is not only a moral failure, but also a legal one. It is therefore time to move beyond the common but mistaken idea that transit zones, because they are at the edge of the country's territory, are also beyond the reach of the law. These zones are not fully inside the country, but not fully outside either. And because of this, people often think they are not covered by international law. But in international law principle, just because a space is not officially a state territory does not mean that the state has no responsibility. International law clearly supports the idea that states have legal obligation beyond their borders, especially when they exercise control over individuals. This principle is not new. It is firmly rooted in binding legal texts. For example, Article 1 of the European Convention of Human Rights requires states to guarantee the rights set out in the Convention to everyone under their jurisdiction, regardless of where they are physically located. Likewise, Article 2 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights obliges states to respect the rights of any person within their territory or under their jurisdiction. This interpretation has been confirmed by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, which stated in General Comment number 31 that jurisdiction is not limited by geography. It extends to any situations where states exercise effective control over an individual, even outside its territory. These legal sources make one thing clear: where there is control, there is responsibility. Indeed, in transit zones, a state often controls who enters, who is detained, who can ask for asylum. This control is enough to make the states legally responsible under international law. Moreover, international courts have already confirmed this. In the Armour versus France case in 1996, the European Court of Human Rights said that keeping asylum seekers in the airport's international zone was still the responsibility of France. And similarly, in the ND and NT versus Spain in 2020, the court said that Spain was responsible for sending migrants back to Morocco, even that it happened outside Spain's borders. The key idea is simple: legal responsibility follows control, not borders. And as law professor Guy S. Goldwyn-Gill explains, a jurisdiction based on control is essential to protect human rights and avoid legal gaps. Ladies and gentlemen, international human rights law was not made to be applied only in comfortable places. It should protect people where it is the most needed, where they are vulnerable, invisible, and without a legal status. Today, countries try to manage migration by pushing it outside their borders and using transit zones with unclear legal status. And in these situations, international courts are often the only way to stop abusing. Giving them an extraterritorial power helps fill these dangerous legal gaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear the opening statements for the against position by Paris 1, Panthéon-Sorbonne University debate team. You two have 4 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, respected colleagues. The second article of the Charter of the United Nations states that the organization is based on the principle that sovereign equality for all its members must be respected. It poses no doubt that the rights of migrants must be protected. And it also poses no doubt that the debate around migrant rights is an inherently political debate. We must also agree that the law functions within a system of responsibility and consent. The proposal that international courts should exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction on the violation of migrant rights in transit zones challenges the very legal foundation upon which consent is required for all international jurisdiction. But that is only part of the problem. The other part is the political part. Our true point is to examine to what extent the broader conception of international courts' prerogatives lead to a politicization of litigation. But for this, we must begin by defining the terms. International courts are treaty-based institutions that operate with jurisdiction conferred by states and can refer, for example, to the International Court of Justice and also human rights courts. Extraterritorial jurisdiction, more precisely, this time seeks to shed light upon the extension of a court's authority beyond the national territory of the state being judged. So migrant rights include the right to seek asylum, protection from torture and inhuman treatment, and the access to legal remedies, of course, such as guaranteed by the 1951 Refugee Convention or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Migrants are thus often obligated to use transit zones, which are spaces that are liminal between countries, passages, time passages, airports, maritime zones, and these are places where the respect of migrant rights are particularly difficult to respect. Now, how do we actually conciliate all of these notions together? Because that is the true problem, and that is the core of the motion at hand. The reasons that we might explicit to reject this motion are based off of three grounds. And the very first must be that international jurisdiction requires consent. The 36th article of the Statutes of the International Court of Justice states this. States have to explicitly give their consent and have accepted the authority of the international jurisdiction that wishes to sanction them in any way. This is a fundamental principle on which international law is based. Secondly, there are practical difficulties linked to extraterritorial jurisdiction that cannot be ignored. Many transit zones are under the shared control of multiple states or exists in areas of legal uncertainty, such as offshore platforms or border zones. So international courts are not equipped to investigate or enforce rulings in those areas. And if these international courts are not equipped to enforce rulings in those areas, then in what case can we say that their jurisdiction is not simply symbolic? Lastly, expanding international jurisdiction risks politicizing the debate quite a lot. Issues such as migration rights touch on national identity, security, public order. If international courts are seen as overstepping these boundaries, what legitimacy do they truly have over these national borders? And more than that, how do the political bodies inside national states actually react to international rulings? So if we fully recognize that migrant rights must be protected, and that, of course, poses no doubt within our team, this must be done within the limits of our legal structure and not in defiance of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard the opening statements for both sides of the argument. Proceeding now to the first rebuttal, starting with the Catholic University of Lille. You have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me well?
Yes. Ms. Nguyen, on your side, the camera is lagging a bit, so I would kindly ask everyone else to turn your cameras off. Thank you. Okay, you can start when you're ready.
All right. I will start in 3, 2, 1. So, dear fellow debaters, you mentioned that international courts were politically biased. While no system is perfect, we believe that international courts provide an essential mechanism of last resort, especially when domestic systems fail or are complicit. So far from being biased, they operate based on codified international treaties and judgments are subject to rigorous legal scrutiny. For instance, Article 13 of the European Court of Human Rights explicits the right to an effective remedy. International courts exist to enforce this when national mechanisms are absent. Furthermore, the Rome Statute of the ICC in this preamble recognizes that international courts complement national jurisdictions and they do not replace them. So we want to argue that jurisdiction in human rights law is not only limited to territory, thanks to effective control, which is a principle accepted in numerous international rulings. When we apply it to migrants, when they're detained, controlled, or processed by border agents in a transit zone, the state is exercising effective control over their rights and freedoms. So, the state's obligations under international law are triggered. For instance, modern border control technology, which surveillance and monitoring, extends a state's reach beyond physical borders. So in this case, the states may have control and thus legal obligations in this context. I would like to mention Article 1 of the ECHR, which requires states to secure rights to, and I quote, everyone within their jurisdiction, which includes extraterritorial jurisdiction where there is effective control. This has been in the European Court of Human Rights judgment in the Loizidou versus Turkey case in 1995, which established that states can be held responsible for human rights violations beyond their borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for the first rebuttal by the debate team of Paris 1 and Sorbonne, you do have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
Okay, so I will start my speech in 1, 2, 3. So our first argument is about the violation of state sovereignty, because as my colleague Magna mentioned, it is based on consent. And so we think that granting extra territorial jurisdiction risks allowing international courts to interfere too much in domestic border policies, and thus undermining the principle of national self-determination, which goes against the principle of consent. So in that sense, states have the sovereign right to control their borders and immigration procedures. This jurisdictional expansion threatens the balance between consent and imposition. Then we have the legal and practical uncertainty that is created by the concept of effective control, which is subjective and inconsistent, which can lead to confusion about international courts and their interference. So in Bankovic versus Belgium in 2001, the European Court of Human Rights rejected the extraterritorial jurisdiction without clear authority or control, which highlighted how such claims can stretch legal definitions beyond reason. And then concerning the politicization argument, we think that better alternatives already exist that do not imply any political implication of courts. We should focus more on strengthening regional mechanisms, such as funding UN monitoring bodies or empowering NGOs to document abuses and support migrants on the territory. And these solutions promote a compliance without triggering any jurisdictional conflict or political implication. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to the second rebuttal. Catholic University of Lille, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, can I just make sure that I'm visible, audible, and my internet connection is functioning?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. I will now be beginning my speech. Fellow debaters, this motion is not about abstract jurisdiction. It is about real people caught in transit zones where states exert control but claim no responsibility. These zones, airports, borders, offshore camps are often legal grey areas and deliberately constructed to deny migrants the full protection of law. We must be clear, geography cannot override rights. International law, including Article 33 of the 1951 Refugee Convention, prohibits refoulement. regardless of whether someone has formally entered a country, as seen in the CDG airport case, where a Kurdish asylum seeker was held in limbo for months. States use legal fiction to avoid obligations, but fiction cannot defeat fundamental rights. The European Court of Human Rights agrees. In Amour versus France, it ruled that holding asylum seekers in a transit zone amounted to deprivation of liberty and fell under national jurisdiction. Control, not border status, determines legal responsibility. And this isn't just theory. Now, critics will say that this infringes on state sovereignty. Indeed, as the opposition stated, law relies on national sovereignty and consent. Yet it is an evolving body, and sovereignty and consent have never forgiven human degradation. How does international law stop? How does international law continue? How can it stop if it just simply isn't equipped to jurisdict? We evolve. Now, let us be clear, sovereignty is not a shield for abuse. Article 1, paragraph 3 of the UN Charter and the Vienna Convention remind us that states are bound to uphold human rights in good faith. International courts don't replace national systems, they reinforce them when those systems fail. Look at the Balmondine versus Bush case, when the US Supreme Court ruled that detainees in Guantanamo, outside of the US territory, still had right to habeas corpus. Because at the heart of this debate is one principle: rights have remedies. Without international jurisdiction, migrants in transit zones are left without either. And when national systems abdicate responsibility, international courts must step in, not to weaken sovereignty, but to uphold justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now to pass the floor to Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, you have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
Perfect. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Well, I'd first of all like to address the argument you made about that it being a legal grey area, transit zones being a legal grey area. Because in your introduction, you mentioned that countries, well, states are legally responsible under international law, or they have the responsibility beyond their borders, meaning that it is not a legal grey area. So what we should do instead of just expanding jurisdiction without clear boundaries, we should strengthen the frameworks we already have, since they do seem to work. And second of all, you mentioned, well, Martin already mentioned, addressed the effective control argument. But I'd further like to say that we need some consistent and clear legal standards, since the effective control is just too vague. And further, I'd like to say that since we already have our courts that are just quite efficient in what they're doing, since they're closer to the actual case, and also more efficient, seeing as they can handle it quicker, they might be more, they might be rather able to handle this than an international court that is further away from the victims. So we therefore say that the point of enforceability must be taken seriously, since justice without being able to enforce the justice is no justice. And as you mentioned, we don't want a fiction, but rather, instead of having symbolic action, we want real action and real enforceability. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the rebuttal. Now to hear the closing statements. Starting with Catholic University of Lille in favor, you have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible to all?
You are, but I would kindly ask everyone else to turn off your cameras so the connection is stable. Thank you.
Sorry for the poor network connection.
Yes, you're good to go. You have 2
So
minutes.
I will start. So the opposing team, you mentioned that it wasn't a legal gray area, but how do you explain that so many case laws around this topic have arisen recently? this topic is bound to a strong legal fiction. And you also mentioned that extraterritorial jurisdiction violates state sovereignty, but sovereignty is not absolute. Under national law, international law, sovereignty is limited by states' obligations under human rights and customary international law. States voluntarily limit their sovereignty when they ratify treaties like the European Convention on Human Rights or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. But fellow debaters, this debate is not just about legal theory. It is about real people trapped in invisible zones, deprived of basic rights by deliberate legal loopholes. Transit zones have become spaces that exercise full control over migrants, but yet deny full responsibility. The human rights law is clear. Control creates obligation. The ECHR and the ICCPR tell us that when a state controls a person, even outside its borders, its human rights duties follow. No fiction of non-entry can erase that. Opponent says this infringes on sovereignty, but sovereignty is not a license to violate rights. As the UN Charter and Vienna Convention remind us, states have pledged to uphold international law and not sidestep these duties by manipulating geography. And most importantly, without international oversight, there is no remedy for migrants stuck in these zones. National systems often fail, and international courts are the last line of justice, because rights without remedies are meaningless, because control responsibility is dangerous, and because the person's dignity does not disappear at the border. We affirm international courts must have extraterritorial jurisdiction over violations of migrant rights in transit zones. It is not just lawful, it is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. We'll now hear the closing statements by Panthéon-Sorbonne University. You do have 2 minutes.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Honourable judges, we all agree that migrant rights must be protected. There's no question. But the motion before us is not about whether to protect them, it's about how. The proposal to extend international courts' jurisdiction extraterritorially over transit zones poses significant legal, institutional, and practical risks, as we mentioned. First, such jurisdiction challenges the foundational principle of state sovereignty, as Martin explained. Sovereign states maintain the right to regulate activity within and at their borders. So, permitting international courts to adjudicate events occurring outside a state's territory, often in third countries or contested zones, as we mentioned in the introduction, introduces legal uncertainty and risks infringing upon the authority of states not even party to the case. Second, the problem of enforcement cannot be overlooked, as I mentioned before. International courts lack direct enforcement power. Their authority depends on a state corporation, as we mentioned, consent. And history shows that states are often unwilling to comply with extraterritorial rulings they perceive as intrusive. The risks reducing these courts to symbolic forums. And third, jurisdiction must be based on clear and consistent legal standards. The motion relies heavily on vague concepts such as effective control, which are notoriously difficult to define and apply consistently. So rather than expanding jurisdiction without clear boundaries, the international community should strengthen cooperative frameworks, enhance accountability within existing legal regimes, and support regional solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can all now relax. You are no longer graded after this spot. So, first of all, congratulations from our side for completing your 8th final match. What a journey since the first day of the group phases. As always, we are delighted to share with you as soon as we confirm the scores with the judges for this match. And of course, the team that passes to the next round will work with you as soon as we know the results to schedule for your quarterfinals match. Already now, we can have some short feedback from yourselves on how you experienced the match, the research, and the exchange of ideas. Perhaps starting with the Catholic University, Ms. Lopez.
Yes, it was a very interesting subject, especially with all the examples we're seeing today, unfortunately. And we are also always so grateful for being able to take part of this debate. And also, for this round, we were helped by our coach, which was quite useful for the debate. And one of the difficulties maybe have been finding a good organization as we were in the exam period. But it's always a pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you very much. Now passing the floor to Paris and P-Sorbonne, Mr. Velle, how was the debate?
Yeah, so I think it was really interesting because I actually am currently taking a course on foreign law and nationality. And I mean, I recognized all of the things that I've learned when studying because I'm also in my exam period. So that was, I think, the difficulty as well for me personally. But yeah, I think it is a really interesting issue, and that is always very on topic in the sense that it never outdates, and we still have these problems. And in that sense, it was very important to me as well, and that's also why I took the course to understand these issues and to kind of remove myself a bit of like the commercial and international law and understand the problems of all these people. So that was really good to see. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for sharing with us. For Catholic University of Lille, Ms. Nguyen, how was the debate?
It was very interesting to do the research, and also with, as you just said, that is a topic that is never outdated with Russia and Israel right now. It is very difficult also, yes, to manage our time to do the debate while revising for our exams. But yeah, it was very interesting, and yeah, thank you very much to all the fellow debaters as well.
Thank you. From Paris and P-Sorbonne, Ms. Martabali.
Yes, so I much enjoyed the research of this topic, especially because it's very interesting looking into the history of these very specific words, like the etymology of what a migrant is supposed to be, and actually the legal significance behind those words today. And I'm by no means a publicist, so I don't very often engage in human rights law, etc. So it actually gave me an occasion to look into history of law, which is something that I absolutely adore, and also cross it with international public law, which I don't get to do very often at all. So it was very enriching. I liked it a lot.
Oh, so great. Thank you for sharing. From Catholic University of Lille, Ms. Simpson.
Well, thank you to everyone, to the judges, to Team for La Sorbonne for participating. We're genuinely honored to have gotten this far with our lack of legal experience. But the research for this topic was really complicated because whereas in other topics, debate topics we felt like we were lacking resources. In this specific subject, it was just bombarding of information, so many different sources, legal case laws, etc., and a lot of political views as well. And it's quite a hard subject to debate without getting into a personal point of view or without getting emotional, which I'm very bad at, clearly. But thank you to everyone for participating.
Thank you for sharing. Ms. Dietmar of Paris and P-Sorbonne University.
Well, I first of all like to say that it was definitely a highly interesting topic, and it was great participating in this debate and debating against you. It was definitely very, very enriching to do the research because, as Magna mentioned, I also don't have a lot of classes related to international public law or human rights law, so it was really interesting to look into that. Which, I mean, it is a very, very important topic. So I had a lot of, well, it was very, very interesting looking into all of that, especially the case law, as you mentioned as well, because there were unfortunately lots of cases that treated this particular subject. So thank you very much for the topic and for organizing the debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for the feedback. It's from the organizing side, it's been a pleasure to and honor to see your progress throughout the debates during this edition. So it's always wonderful to see how you progress between day one and the knockout stages, or perhaps day 3. All right. As always, we do encourage you to stay in contact. You can find each other through the LinkedIn announcement posts. You can also reach out to us in regards to being connected by email. Unfortunately, with the scheduling and technical conflicts, the networking event is happening after 8 finals. There is also a bit of surprise in regards to a workshop for the next step in your professional careers, in regards to your LinkedIn, CV, motivation letters, and applications for international careers. But already, as you know, at the end of sessions, we do have a certain networking questions that you can already exchange some experiences other than the debates. And in this particular one, we have 2 questions. So I will ask in general, either one member of your team can answer, or all 3 of you can pass the baton, so to say. And the first question would be, what are the activities or the opportunities that your faculty or student associations, your university, gives you throughout the year? We have already heard about some options in regards to applying yourselves through different courses, but what other opportunities are there, perhaps even socially? So starting first with the Catholic University of Lille, what could you share with us?
I will go ahead, and if my colleagues want to add anything, of course they can. From an international point of view, in our specific course, we are obligated to do 8 weeks abroad in work experience. Wherever that may be, we can choose the country of our choice. So that's a great opening for our legal career, also from a linguistics point of view for many people. We have lots of opportunities, such as participating in this debate. And from a social point of view, we have plenty of associations. So that's a very important part of life on the campus for us. I know that each of us are part of our different associations. So whether that be arts associations, student associations, whether that be in international law associations, or even charity work. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing. Maybe your colleagues, if there's anything to add. Right, so then passing the floor to Paris THIULDT, the university team. How is it for your studies?
I'll start. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I mean, I just wanted to mention that we get to attend a lot of conferences. Our university organizes a lot of conferences on different topics in all legal fields, so that's very great. And then we also get to broaden our horizons. For example, I attended a conference on international fashion law and all kinds of things. So it was amazing. Or also, we just a broad range of topics, so that's great. And I mean, we also have to mention that our university also has a lot of associations, and all the 3 of us are part of ELSA. So it's amazing to be part of that and to get to participate in this debate through our association. Maybe if the others want to add something, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think Emily was crystal clear, but if I had to add only one thing, is that Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne is absolutely unbeatable when it comes to sports. We have more sports to say any sport, and we probably have an association for it. We have juggling, we have nautical skiing, we have everything. We have absolutely everything, and it's ludicrous because we get emails saying that if you want to take a train, we can go like kite surfing in Bretagne next week if you want to, and I find that absolutely amazing. It's very enriching.
That's amazing. Perhaps one of the associations that the Lille students mentioned might be also something where you can cross each other and meet, perhaps also in person, for some sporting activities then, since there's quite a wide range from Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne. Speaking of, it's not often we do have 2 debate teams from the same country. So this second question in particular might be getting some interesting answers from your teams. And that is, There are always some stereotypes, of course, be that nationally or internationally, about certain areas, be that a particular culinary scene or perhaps artistry, or, well, there's a lot of options. So what would you say are the stereotypes that might there be about the city you're currently studying at and living that turned out either to be false or completely true? So this time passing the floor first to Paris and Sorbonne. What were the stereotypes that you have had or seem to be proven or disproven about Paris?
I'd like to throw out there that maybe that Paris has great restaurants and that we can eat great food, and that is absolutely true. I mean, there are just a lot of options, and so far I've never been disappointed. So I'd say that that's definitely true. Maybe the others want to add something, but that's what came first to mind.
For me, I heard that there's this stereotype that Parisians are very in French we say aigri, so meaning a bit grumpy, which it really depends on the street and on the density of tourists, I would say for myself. I've noticed that the stereotype can be confirmed, and even sometimes I do become the stereotype depending on how stressed I am or how quickly I have to move on the street. But I think that not all the Parisians are grumpy, and I've been living here for a few months now, so I think that it all depends on the people. So it's kind of it can be confirmed, but it can also be denied in that sense.
Right, Bernadette. I think for most of European countries, if we walk around the city centers, particularly in the tourist season, we become background for a lot of tourist pictures. So I can only imagine the frustration of being stuck in a start of the street. What about Catholic University of Lille? How is it for your city?
I would say that first of all,
Thank you. I'm originally from Paris, so I would like to say that I might know about both stereotypes. And as someone from Paris, I had stereotypes about people from Lille that they drink a lot of beers, and that is true. They drink all day, every day, 10 a.m. on a Monday. It's normal for them. And also, and that might be something that just people from Paris could see, is that in the subway, they have weird behaviors in the way that, like, in Paris, if you're on a escalator, I forgot the word, if you stand on the right, is that you're not moving, and on the left, you're actually walking upstairs. But in Lille, they apparently don't know this rule, and they stand everywhere, and you cannot, like, if you're late, you cannot be late, you cannot run anywhere. So I would say that as someone from Paris, it was a stereotype that has been confirmed. Yes.
Right, Ms. Sampson?
I mean, I don't have much to add, honestly. I'm not originally from Lille either, but the fact that Lillois drink a lot of beer and are very relaxed and stand in the way is very, very true. But I would like to add that I did have a bit of a cliche of it not being a very culturally and artistically diverse area, and that's it's a misconception. It's a lot richer than it looks.
That's really wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. As always, please stay in touch. Keep an eye out on the email announcing the results. And of course, if you have any questions, we are here to help. And once again, congratulations on completing your 8th final match. I now pass the floor to Professor Lamanche to close the session.
Yes, thank you. It was great to see your two teams reaching this level of the competition and debating on a topic which might not be used indeed, but still nowadays, of course, we talk about it a lot in the news. So we hope as well you gain a more, I would say, case law and as well doctrinal, let's say, opinions on it. And yes, for the next stage, that will be quarterfinals. As soon as we have the results, we share with you by email first, and then we'll publish. And as well, there will be in the networking session, like my colleague mentioned. Have in mind that as well, you will receive certificates for the ranking as well, not only certificates for the participation, and for the coach as well, they will be receiving as well certificates, the judge as well. But for the judge, that will be a bit later when we finish the competition as well. And for the rest, yes, so that was the last 8 of finals. You will still have 7 days for the team who will go to the quarterfinals, and you'll be able to ask as well possible little adjustment for the day and time. We are almost at the end of the competition, so it means as well think about if you want to come to The Hague for the finals, for the visits of the international organizations. We'll communicate with you more information by email about this, but as well it's an opportunity to meet the other participants and network as well with them. And yes, so that's another element as well I want to mention. Your participation for this edition will as well add to the participation to all the other previous teams in the World League of Debates in the ZIEC format, so which is updated every year. So all the other teams who already participated, of course, they helped to bring your university up in the ranking. Both universities are already in the ranking, and that will be, of course, for you to contribute thanks to your performance. And as well, next year it will be possible for a team of your university to participate because you secured a priority right for your university to register, because you are already among the 16 best teams of this edition. So many thanks. It was a pleasure to have you all this match, and we hope one more match even after for the team who comes out of this match. And of course we keep in touch, so wish you a great evening, and we keep in touch. Bye bye.
Thank you, same to
Thank you
you.
very much.